According to the law of one, over 50% of the souls that have incarnated here, reincarnated here on this planet, are actually not from this planet. Now, there are those that go through the density on this planet or come back in third density again, which if you don't know what that is, take a look at the law of one material, or people who talk about that, you'll learn about the different densities. But we're in third density, by the way, moving into fourth. But ultimately, a lot of people who are here on this planet right now, and this was actually according to the during the 80s, so it might even be more at this point, are actually souls that weren't on this planet before incarnating now on this planet. It's actually one of the reasons why it's so hard for us to get collective consensus, and why there's so many divided opinions and divided polarizations on this planet. It makes it a very unique melting pot of people actually coming from very different places, and of course some coming from this planet as well, but it's very unique in that sense. But one of the reasons I bring that up is because there are those on this planet called wanderers. You may also know them as starseeds. We can call them chosen ones, which, although we could put that in a different category as well. But I want to focus on the term wanderers because that's the term used in the law of one. And what a wanderer is actually a soul that has experienced a higher level of density, a higher level of consciousness, that has made the decision, has made the choice to come back in order to aid the expansion of consciousness, in order to aid the moving up of densities of the planet, this planet right now. And over 50%, or not 50% of people, but a lot of people have actually come from, again, off planet back here in order to aid the expansion of consciousness. And so in this video, I want to go over 5 signs that you're one of these people, a wanderer. Now, one of the things is, if you're watching my videos, even if you're not a wanderer, you're probably most likely someone who's in some sort of designation like this, that wants to expand consciousness, that wants to be a light worker, that really is drawn to that kind of stuff. We're not talking about forcing anything here. It's just a natural inclination and draw and attraction to these things. But I want to go over 5 signs that you may be a wanderer, and someone who really has come back in order to aid in the expansion of consciousness here, in order to aid the planet and the collective in really expanding and evolving in consciousness, in density, more into love and light, more into awareness, and acting in accordance to the one creator, all that is, God, the universe, whatever you want to call it. And the reason I want to mention this is because a lot of wanderers aren't aware that they are wanderers. They, like anyone else that comes into this planet, goes through what's called the veil of forgetting. Now, a wanderer has certain things, which we're going to go over, which I believe acts as a catalyst to help them discover that they are wanderers and that they have this almost like mission to expand consciousness, to really bring more people into the light, to shine their light and invite more people in. So I believe these things actually act as catalysts, even though they can induce quite a bit of pain while you're going through this human experience. So anyway, without further ado, after that long intro, let's jump into what these 5 signs are, starting in reverse order with number 5. Now, number 5 is very simple, and it's you're very, very spiritual, and you're really drawn, really attracted to so many things metaphysical. You know, when you hear metaphysical things, you don't just dismiss them as woo-woo. You actually are open to them. In fact, you're drawn to them. Maybe that's things like crystals. Maybe that's things like readings. Maybe that's things like signs, like you're drawn to stuff in my videos. Maybe that's things like raising your vibration, you know, love and light, understanding different levels of consciousness. You're really drawn to these metaphysical things. It's not just like a passing curiosity. You just seem to notice that there's something with these things that just resonates with you. Something inside you is almost pulling you towards those things. And this is a huge sign because ultimately you're coming from, again, off planet, having already experienced a different level of density, again, from the perspective that we're talking about right now, a higher level. And so these are things at those different levels of density that are actually more normal. In 3D, things like crystals, things like, you know, expanding your consciousness, things like signs from the universe and synchronicities, it's not a normal experience, and in fact is usually dismissed as nonsense and woo-woo in the 3D experience, because the 3D experience, you know, third density has a lot to do with materialistic things, material world, the 5 senses. But if you, again, from what I'm talking about here, have come from an experience that is beyond that, that is more tuned into the soul, more tuned into energy, which is what happens at 4th density, 5th density, moving beyond, going on. It has more to do with being collective. And we could talk about different polarizations, like service to the collective, to others, and service to self, but that's not what we're going to get into in this one. But typically, I would assume you're coming more from service to others, service to the collective. If you're watching this video, and neither is it better or worse. And again, I don't want to get too off tangent here, but ultimately you're really drawn to, again, tuning more into that. That is a massive sign. That is not just a coincidence, because I know you know plenty of people who are not. And maybe it seems crazy that they're not because you're getting all this information and these downloads and these awarenesses, and most people are stubbornly like, no, that's stupid. That's woo-woo. I'm not open to it. They're closed-minded skeptics. And that's most people. It's a very small percentage of people who are wanderers, but they're typically drawn to stuff like this and the metaphysical and the spiritual. And number 4, I mentioned in a recent video, but it's feelings of being homesick or lost or just not fitting in. Now, the homesick one is actually very interesting because a lot of wanderers, like I said, have come from off planet. They've come from other places. Again, where they did not incarnate from the site, going through the densities on this planet and did it elsewhere. And again, a wanderer being someone who is most likely moved past 3D or a third density. And I think you could technically have gone from third density back to a different octave in third density. So you were in a high octave. Again, I don't want to get too technical with this to confuse you if you've not read The Law of One, which is something I'm still going through and still trying to fully understand myself. It's a very dense but very, very interesting material. But because you're coming from literally a different place that has a different energy and different standards and different set points vibrationally, yes, it can feel like you're out of place when you come here, when you're back here, especially if you felt this when you were young. Because when you're a kid, you don't really have much reason to feel that way. You're kind of going through this thing as a kid, you're being curious. But for myself, when I was a kid, I always felt like that. I just felt, from even a very young age, just out of place, like I didn't belong. That was kind of the thought I had, like I don't belong here. Like, why don't I belong here? Why do I keep feeling like I don't belong here? And I was having these thoughts like at 4 or 5, I think even younger. And a lot of times that is because, again, you're literally not from here. When we come from a 3D paradigm, from a materialistic paradigm that, oh, you're in this body and that's what you are and there was nothing before, well, it can become easy to think, well, that's kind of silly. But when you come from an energetic paradigm, a quantum paradigm, a oneness paradigm, a love and light paradigm from different levels of density, it's easy to see, oh, actually, I've had plenty of lifetimes in physical beyond this one. And so I am going to be taking some of what I had there into this one energetically. And that's why you can feel homesickness, because you're literally from somewhere else. You may have gone through the other densities on a different planet, in a different galaxy. You may, again, we don't get too far out in this one, but that is something that can happen. You have experienced higher levels of density, higher levels of consciousness, where it's normal for love and light to just be the default. If we look at someone like Bashard, for example, I can't remember what density he's in, 4th or 5th. He says that it's actually very, very hard for his people to feel negativity at all. Like, it's actually really difficult. In the way it's very difficult for a lot of people here now on our planet to feel positivity, it's the same for them with negativity. But anyway, without riffing too much more here, that's the 4th sign, that you just kind of feel like homesick in a way, even though, you know, you're at home, what you think is your home. You feel kind of lost. You feel a little bit, or have had these feelings of just being out of place. Now, number 3 is one you're probably not going to be surprised here, but you feel you're very empathetic and very selfless. And you just care and you're compassionate. And it really astounds me. And it astounded me for a very long time until I learned more of this stuff and really kind of crossed through that veil of forgetting in many different things. It's still there. There's still much more awareness to be had. But it always astounded me as I went through life just how just not compassionate a lot of people are, or how rude a lot of people are, just kind of how a lot of people seem not to care about others. And again, it's a lot of people who are focused on themselves because they're kind of in low consciousness and they really don't have the ability to focus on anything other than themselves right now, because they're just going through a lot of struggle. But it always surprised me, you know, and when I would come across compassionate people and people who just had that genuine care, compassion, and empathy, it would be a rare thing and always very, very appreciated. But I started to realize it isn't the norm. And I'm talking about this in a very natural sense. You know, there are people who go out there and they learn how to be more charismatic. They learn how to develop people skills and kind of manufacture this. And of course, there are some people who can obviously move into this and develop this. You can develop these empathy. You can develop those kinds of things naturally. But if you feel like you've always kind of been like that naturally, again, like I've been like that since I was a kid. I always felt that way. Even though I definitely had periods where I went on the other side of it. I think after kind of having that thrown back in my face a lot, like I was bullied and all these different things, but I always felt just so much empathy. I always felt so much care. I always felt kind of really emotionally connected to how someone was doing. So if you're someone who is also very naturally empathetic and selfless, again, it's because you're coming from this higher level of consciousness where empathy, selflessness, love and light, connection, community, these kinds of things are much more valued. And when we come here onto this planet, right now, it's not as valued, it's not as much. But you're coming from that energy, from that, which is why you have that natural empathy, natural not selfishness, selflessness. Now, number 2 is you're extremely drawn to helping the world be a better place. You're extremely drawn to not only awakening, but you in some way want to help others awaken. It's like you have a mission to do so. It's almost like you just have a draw to doing that. That's how I feel, and through feeling that and through experimenting and exploring that, I've learned better ways of doing that. For example, I think a lot of us have gone through the phase of thinking, I need to wake people up and almost like shake people awake. I've now found not only does that impede against free will, not going to do that, it also doesn't work. What I have found is being the example and invitation. It allows people the space to then make their own decisions. Remember, third density is the density of choice, the split, duality, where you can choose positive polarization, negative polarization in each moment, right? The choice to choose higher consciousness, love and light, or its opposite, or anything in between, right? And so, but ultimately, those who are wanderers typically always have this kind of mission. They're drawn to it, right? You can't help but do it. And when you really tune into what you are, why you came here, you start piercing this veil of forgetting, you start to move down this path of wanting to make the world a better place. And you probably learn certain things like understanding that really expanding your consciousness helps the collective consciousness become a better place. That actually helps the planet. The more that you're able to exercise your true deep compassion and empathy and really share that with people in ways while also not impeding your boundaries, helps the planet. If you do stuff like this and create content where you're sharing what's coming through you, it expands the consciousness on the planet. If you do healings or things like that, it does it when you step into your natural gifts. As a wanderer, you most likely, again, come back here to give. It helps expand and help the planet, and you have a draw to doing that. It's a huge sign that you are, again, a wanderer, starseed, whatever designation you want to give it. And my advice in this invitation would just be to fully step into and really shine your light as brightly as you can, because by doing that, your mission will be really revealed to you. It will feel natural and in alignment, and you will do a lot, and I mean a lot, to actually making the world a better place, expanding consciousness through, again, doing it through yourself, which will naturally draw you to wanting to be in service to others, is a massive thing. Again, it may not always seem like that in the physical, but from an energetic standpoint, you're doing so much good by doing that. And number 1, I just wanted to throw in there because it's also one that's super relevant to me, but you feel so much more at peace in nature, around animals, around plants, than you do around most people. Now, this doesn't mean you can't feel comfortable around people. Your soul tribe and things like that. Like, there are specific people I feel very comfortable around. But I have to admit, I don't want to be dishonest here. Most people I don't feel connected to, and most people I don't feel comfortable around, and I feel an energetic disconnect. And it's no fault of their own. Again, it's no better or worse, whatever experience you choose. There's no superiority, inferiority, anything like that going on. But I just find it difficult because our energies, vibrations, frequencies are in different place through our choices, right? And it's hard for me, for example, to hang out with someone who's calibrated at an energy of fear or anger, or let's just say things that are lower on the Hawking scale of consciousness. I just have such a hard time doing that. I have a hard time with things like small talk because, I don't know, I find it disingenuous, things of that nature. And so I'm very drawn to people who are doing the inner work, very drawn to other wanderers as well, and certain people, and I so value and I'm so appreciative for those people. But ultimately, I always feel, for the most part, more comfortable in nature, in solitude, with animals. I mean, some of my happiest memories are when I've been on my travels and I've met like random animals, random dogs and cats. I met a turtle once, it was great. Helped him back to water. Like those moments like stick out to me and sometimes bring tears to my eyes. When I do certain meditations, I think of those things because if I'm trying to get into my heart space, I will bring up those memories that help raise my frequency. And you may have felt something similar. Again, it's not to do with not being able to connect with people, but again, because you, again, from this idea of a wanderer, coming back from an energy that was at a different level of density, was at a different level of consciousness, and coming back, you still have that residue. You still, from what I can gather, connect more to that energy. And when you're in nature, which calibrates at a much more consistent energy, when you're with animals, especially ones like dogs and cats that, maybe some people will debate with cats, but I've always loved cats too, that really have more of a consistent vibration. They're really more in that loving energy a lot of the time. Trees are another big one. Even though these are second density in nature, again, you will feel a lot more drawn to things in that nature instead of maybe the chaotic energies of a lot of people who are in third density. So that's just another sign that you may be a wanderer. You've always felt that connection to nature and animals. I've done it, again, since I was a small kid. I used to, when I was 5, there was this kind of nature center near me I used to walk to all the time. I just loved going in there, sitting by the creek, watching the animals, just kind of being in that. And it just always made me feel just amazing, really. It felt like home when I was in that energy, actually. I'm gonna throw one more in there, because why not? If you were resonating with this video or drawn to this video, you may also be a wanderer, again, because you wouldn't be drawn to this material if you weren't. You would watch a few minutes of it and go like, this is nonsense, turn it off. And you wouldn't have made it to this point in the video at all. So if you're at the video at this point, I would say that's another huge sign that you are a wanderer, a starseed, or one of these designations that have come here to expand consciousness through the expansion of your own consciousness, and then how that's going to serve others, whatever that looks like for you, whatever that expression is for you. I would go check out this video next, where I go over 5 signs you actually have fully raised your consciousness. You're really tapping into that potential on the consciousness scale for yourself. A lot of great things are going to come in when you do that, so I go watch that video next.